for Western practice. And so in the rite of marriage, it also includes the questions to the bride and the groom. And so we have from the 15th century, with the serving of reading, it becomes usual, and usually comes between crowning and the prayer, but service of reading also come before, and in some manuscripts the rite can be joined with the divine liturgy, but this is an exception, but not a rule. So in a modern rite, there appear also two more prayers, which are on your handout, in the prayer 1 and prayer 2. They first appear about 10th century and become, since the 15th century, become regular. There is a formula at the putting on the crowns. O Lord our God, crown them with glory and honor, which is allusion to the Psalm 8. And there are also other formulae existent. For instance, some manuscripts include formula: Father blesses, Son crowns, and Holy Spirit abides and completes, as a working symbol, indicator for the working of the Trinity in the sacrament. Crowns being interpreted as royal crowns, as the newlyweds becomes the patriarchs of the new family, new race or new nation, and also crowns are interpreted as a martyr's crowns. The prayer of the joining right hands also sometimes comes together with a formula, but today not in modern rite. However, the action remains. In today's rite, the Psalm 8 verse 6, crown them with glory and honor, is used for the priestly blessing of the newlyweds, while another formula which is also used is thou hast placed upon their heads crowns of precious stones. Psalm 20 verse 4 becomes a prokimenon for the service of readings. The readings, Ephesians 5 and John 2, wedding at Cana, become featured in the majority of the manuscripts, and I already said about communion, and the communion considered as the completion of the sacrament. For instance, St. Simeon of Thessaloniki says that the following: when they sing "One is holy," so in his rite, which he celebrated, was also presanctified gifts for the formula presanctified holy things are for the holy, and there was also response "One is holy," which is not present, not universally present. So he says they sing "One is holy," for he, meaning Christ, is the only sanctification, peace, and union of his servants. So when they sing that, the priest gives communion to the newlyweds, for the goal and completion of every ritual and every divine sacrament is Holy Communion. From the 17th century, what we see that the communion disappears from the marriage rite for several reasons. One is unfortunate reason for many liturgical, some of the liturgical changes, negligence. Is a negligence of Christians towards reception of communion, increase for the requirements for lay communicants, if a long preparation is required, and practice of annual communion, which was universal practice, for instance, in Russia towards the beginning of the 20th century. And there are also problems that some newlyweds may not be eligible for communion. So there might be some canonical issues which prohibit them from receiving communion. And so one of the rites from the 15th century includes honey and almonds as a substitute. So there is also a tendency, some manuscripts would include the exclamation, "Presanctified holy things are for the holy," but no communion. However, we have a sort of a tendency to, when this communion disappears from liturgy, in the 18th century we have it from certain saints of the church, such as Nicodemus the Hagiorite and Cosmas the Aetolian. They they suggest several proposals to sort of reinstall the connection between the Eucharist and the wedding, and thus their proposals has been for the inserting marriage in the liturgy, and that's what we have in some churches today, and some people have problems with that, but there is it's not. Well, it's interestingly, it's both traditional and not, because it's not in a sense it's not traditional because it's a sort of a liturgical back formation. It is just it was not always historically so, but since the Eucharist disappeared, we said, let's reinstall the Eucharist, but we cannot have a Eucharist without the liturgy. And so let's tie the marriage and the Eucharistic liturgy. But why it is traditional? Because it's kind of by its tendency it's traditional, because it's understands the connection of the sacraments properly. It understands that the completion of the sacrament is in the sacrament, which is in the ultimate sacrament, which is the reception of the Holy Communion. So also at later points we have this tendency. We have other elements such as the circling of the analogion 3 times with the singing of the prayer of the hymns of the Traparia. Originally, they were probably sung for the procession of the newlyweds into the wedding chamber, but as it sometimes becomes, what becomes originally a functional procession becomes symbolic procession of the sort of entrance of the newlyweds into the new life. And there is also rites for taking off the crowns and the removal of the crowns. We won't get into that. And we have, but what is in some rites, what we have in some texts, what we have is that when at the end of after they have been crowned, they proceed with the singing of the Traparia, Isaiah dance, and Traparia to the martyrs because they're crowned, and this is symbolic of martyrdom and also of witnessing through their Christian life, which is martyrdom is as their Christian life as martyria, as a witnessing through the life to the Christian. Giving an example of Christian life, and so they come with the singing of the Traparia into the bridal chamber. There, the priest would take off their crowns, and after then 7 days, the priest would come back and take the crowns away. And so that we have 2 rites basically. One rite at the end of the marriage liturgy, which is where the priest takes off their crowns actually in the church, and then the prayer at the end, which is said prayer for the untying or removal of the crown. So this originally 2 separate rites. So what is the tendency in the development of the rite, as I have already indicated, is one is incorporation of the customary rites and their reinterpretation in the light of Christian tradition. 2 is the tendency throughout the historical development of the sacrament and in the patristic, and as it is featured in the patristic writings, is a marriage for Christians is a mystagogia. It's a sacrament in mystery for 2 reasons. It was a historical liturgical tendency of historical evidence, liturgical evidence for the connection of this sacrament with the sacrament, the Eucharist, that it traditionally it always included communion. When this practice fell into disuse, there were calls from the saints of the Church to restore this connection. And second reason is that